Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you're able to tune in to this episode of In Conversation. My name's Dave Sleet. I'm Managing Director of A&A Psychological Accreditation. And in this episode of In Conversation with, I am joined by a very special guest, one that I have come to spend at least 1 hour a month with in Therapists in Conversation. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Leslie Marsh. Leslie, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Dave. I'm absolutely stoked to be here to go on a surfing metaphor.
I am really looking forward to this conversation, simply because of the work that you've already done to promote networking, conversations, collaborations across the therapeutic arena. And I really wanted to kind of get give the audience a chance to get to know a bit more about you, what you do, but also the work that you're doing in networking in the arena. So let's kick off first off with Leslie Marsh. Your introduction, your time, your
Oh,
space.
you froze there, Dave.
Okay.
Okay, you froze there, so I missed a bit of that.
Well, I'm leaving the introduction of you and what you do for you.
Okay,
I I I know and love what it is that you do, but let let the audience hear it from you.
okay, well, I'm a storyteller. First and foremost, that is the biggest thing because, as far as I'm concerned, and it's been proven to me for myself and for most of my clients, that story is the one thing that links all of us because we're all telling one every single day, all day. And it's the story that we tell that actually makes life what it is for us. And it might not be our stories that we're telling. So I like to look at people's stories and listen to them and actually figure out whose story it is, whose talk they're walking. Is it theirs or is it the expectations and ideas of their parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents? Or is it something that they've decided because they've dissociated themselves from that kind of expectation? Have they got lost somewhere in a cul-de-sac of I'm not worthy, I don't know what to do, I'm lost, or just defiantly angry and wounded?
Mm. It's really telling how powerful the impact of other people's stories are on us and how they shape our own retelling of and our own sense of identity, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you look at situations and you understand, you can almost see a constellation, a kind of galaxy of times when someone somewhere said something, did something that you noticed or you took inside yourself,
Mm.
and it changed the way that you thought about things. It moved your mind, it shifted the shape of your thoughts, which, of course, as soon as you shift that shape of thought, you shift your reality and bring it. And sometimes we embrace these things. And I was talking the other day, and as I do, it kind of came out in a spontaneous way, but I saw it in my head. I thought, that's like a taproot from a dandelion, and it goes straight the way down and anchors itself right inside, deep inside. And you can pull on that dandelion as much as you like, but if you leave teeny bit of that taproot, it's still going to be there and it will grow back. So for me, that was a brilliant metaphor of how just a throwaway comment of someone else's wound, someone else's disappointment,
Mm.
their failure to live up to their own expectations or those of someone else's, and their frustration with that. And it could be a teacher, it could be a mother, a father, it could be a sister, a brother, it could be a friend, it could be somebody who doesn't even really know you, but they're just lashing out.
Mm.
But particularly when we're young, because when we're young, we're taking everything on and trying it on to see if it fits,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
the thing with those tap roots, use that analogy, which I think is brilliant, you know, is that someone else who's digging next to that root, they're going to put vibrations onto that root, and you're going to feel whatever that anchor point
Oh
is.
yeah, and take it right up the plant, because once that plant has flowered and you get the lovely fairy tale clock of those seeds that go on the wind,
Yeah,
that's how it spreads, because it spreads from words and deeds and actions.
yeah.
But the word, that those words are words. I mean, the Native Americans, were fond of saying, I think colloquially, that we speak with a forked tongue,
Mm.
but it's about the spirit of the word that's come out, the energy that's behind it will take that seed and it will go and it will hit its mark.
And invariably, the recipient of that kind of hinted seed, if you like, is going to then grow from that,
Oh
and
yeah.
and that take and that's where we get that generational transference of hatred and of fear and of anger that doesn't actually apply to the recipient of that hatred, but once it's in, it does disseminate into everything that they then understand and they look at.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about it is, particularly dandelions are very useful plants.
Mm.
They're healing. They have healing properties.
Mm.
And actually you can make coffee out of that taproot. So, you know, there's always something that can be done with it. It doesn't just sit there, and you don't need the equivalent of a weed killer,
Mm.
which is actually just putting fuel on the fire.
And this idea, and I love the idea that, you know, even the things that we see as negative, we can use them, we can turn them around if we know how to harness them. And that's really something that, you know, the Native American story of the two wolves
Mhm.
really taps into, that you need to feed both wolves. This idea that you just feed the good wolf and the bad one will die. No, you need both. They bring you balance. It's about how you use those energies. And there are times where the anger, where the fear, where the frustration, they need to be expressed. It's how much energy do you give that bad wolf to express those elements?
It's also, anger comes from fear. It
Yes.
comes from the understanding that you don't understand. It's the knowing that there's something that, it's like Stephen King once said when he was in his book Dance Macabre, that the best way to scare someone is to not show them what's behind the door. Don't show the monster. Because our imaginations can do so much more in frightening us and really scaring us silly than, because if you open the door and there's a 6 foot monster there, then you open the door and you go, ah! But then you say, oh, hang on a minute, it's a 6 foot monster. I can deal with that. I can leave that in the cupboard, no problem at all. I don't need to worry about that. But he's still there. He's still kind of going, oh well, you know? And it's like, I call that inner voice that we have, the one who is repeating those litanies of, what makes you think you're going to be alright to do that? Who do you think you are to go above your station? Who do you think you are that you're going to get over this? Nobody wants you to do that. And there's all this kind of echo that goes on. And I call that your inner opponent, because for me that's the level below the imposter.
That is exactly what leads us into today's conversation, because it's that inner kind of competitor that we see in others that holds us back from networking, it holds us back from collaborating, it holds us back from engaging with those ideas, those thoughts, those modalities that are not the modality or the thought or the basic of what we hold.
I think that basically it's very important to understand that just because someone uses different words to explain, or a different way of dealing with things, doesn't make it wrong.
Mm.
It just makes it a curiosity for us. It
Mm.
makes us some, because we are curiosity machines. And that's how we learn. We learn by
Oh, we
looking.
came out of the cave because we wondered what it was like outside.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, there's got to be something better than this.
Hmm.
And and oh, what's that funny thing in the sky? Oh, it's warm. Oh, hang on a minute, that's good. So, but it's also something that, hey, hang on a minute, you stay out there too long, you burn. Oh,
Hmm.
learn not to do that then.
Yeah.
But we've progressed to the point where we don't have to experience it by ourselves. We can learn from others. However, learning from others is also their subjective ideas and ideals of
Hmm.
what right and true is, and we kind of have to find it out for ourselves.
Yeah.
We kind of have
And
to. Some of us will straddle. Some of us will go right down into that pigeonhole and say, "Yeah, this is it. Yeah, this feels right to me. I like this coat. I look good in this suit. This suits me well." And then somebody else will go, "Do you know what? I kind of like to change my wardrobe a little bit, and I think I'll just have that colour today, or I'll have that one today, and I'll wear that. And because today is a day when I feel that I want to be doing this, or I'm meeting this person." And I think that the idea that we are only one facet of a personality is very skewed
it's
because it's
dangerous in my mind.
yeah,
Because we're not able to meet people where they are. And whether we're coaching, whether we're counseling, whether we're therapizing, whichever modality we're working with, if we go into that with that suit on as you described it, and it's the same suit that we wear for absolutely everybody that we come into contact with, we're not meeting them where they need us to be.
no, and they're not meeting us where we need to be seen.
Hmm.
Because it's like I'm sure that everybody who's a therapist who has people or a counsellor who have people coming to them. I'm just a despise that. You're not just a. You are this, but you are so much more. Because it's like, oh, I'm just a mother. You're a mother. My goodness, what have you done? Look at this. You brought
Yeah.
life into the world, but also you're a daughter. You could be a sister. You're a friend, and you're a friend before children. You're a friend after
And that whole
children,
concept,
and you're going to be a friend their own parents.
and but this whole concept of I'm just, and it becomes one dimensional. When
Yeah,
what
and we are
really
so many. We're like
it,
cut diamonds. We have so many different facets of personality, which is why when you pull two separate sets of friends together, one set will think, "What the hell do they see in them? How can you be friends with that person? They're nothing like us." Because this may be your work friends, and this may be your social friends. And it's a case of when you're at work, you're a completely different person to what you are when you're not at work, hopefully.
and this
Because
is where
work should only take one part
mm,
of your personality to deal with.
mm. And this is where I think the growth of therapists in conversation really kind of comes into its own. And if you can, just give us a brief overview of what you've done with therapists in conversation.
Well, it basically came out of this microscopic terrorist that's got its grip round our throats at the moment. And it was a case of, I thought, we're going to be needed. People like us are going to be needed. And people are not going to understand that we're still here, that we can operate over this media, that we can actually still see them, still talk to them, still help them, unless we actually do something about it. So I started on the great sepulchre of LinkedIn and got a hold of people who were all therapists and said, look, I'd like to make this group. So what I did was a bit of networking. I did Zoom chat one-to-ones with them and asked them if they would be interested to form a group and to do a monthly kind of topical magazine show type thing. Originally we started off, we were hoping that our audience would start with questions and we could do that. But we're still in the infancy stage to a certain extent. We have 30 members I think in total and growing. And they range from Reiki people, reflexologists, through to psychotherapists and psychologists and psychiatrists. So we have the gamut, we have the arc, and basically it's a case of people will choose to work with people that they see and know, or feel that they know that they can work with. And they may be interested because a lot of times, and I don't know about you, but a lot of times I get people who come and say, oh, well, I did that and it didn't work, so I'm never going to do that again. I'm not going back to that. And
Yeah.
basically what happened was it was a clash of personality between the therapist and the client. They weren't quite getting them. So allowing people to understand that they can actually go to other places and spaces and still get some aid there and be allowed to use it, couch it in their own terms, be allowed to go to a Reiki therapist because they're what I like to call the hippy dippy. They're that way inclined, and it sings to them, and they understand the language, and that language can be used therefore to help them because it's the same story. It's an aligned story for them.
Yeah.
So that was basically why it happened, and I got Angela, the lovely Angela Day, on board, who's a health kinesiologist. And she kind of reined me in a bit, which is good. But that's basically why she's there. She's my handler.
I got to say, I really do enjoy the relationship that have formed through the whole of that network and the connectivity that is kind of developing as the organization, well, the group has grown. But Angela's whole focus is always the kind of a real incentive to me and I'm sure to others in those conversations, because they are conversations and
Yeah.
there's no kind of if but maybe, it's just a conversation. And for us at APA, the idea that the public myth about the therapeutic professional has got to be taken away. And the only way that can be done is through conversation. But if professionals aren't prepared to have those conversations among themselves, how are we ever going to be able to reassure the public that this kind of myth gatekeeper kind of scenario is just that? It's a myth. We are all human beings. We all converse.
Yeah.
We all laugh. We all cry. You know, we all get frustrated. We all, until we can show that, it's going to be really hard for the public to get past the myths that they've been groomed into, isn't it?
Yeah, the kind of white coat syndrome that is still rife, even although the white coat has kind of gone down the road a bit. It's very important for me for people to see that we are people, that we're human beings, as you say, but we're human beings being professional.
Yeah.
This is part of what we do. We are healers. We're not curers, we're healers. And it's a case of it's an ongoing situation whereby it's actually got more to do with the person coming to us and how they will deal with and how they will take on the responsibility of their healing. We're kind of there to show them the resources, for me personally particularly, to show the resources, to allow them to connect to those resources and to allow them to understand that they are empowered to do that. That, you know, they're not small people who have no power, who have nothing to say, no voice. That they have a voice and they should open that throat and get that voice out of there, because basically those wolves want to howl.
Yeah. And the whole focus of the therapeutic sector in the 20th century was to niche down into modality, practice, model, etc. And that didn't really give us the psychological outcomes that those models were all designed for, because they were never designed to be kept in those silos.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I was reading the other day, and I would possibly have to read it again. Hang on a second, because I've got it here, I think. And it was about data and the use of data to make models and to make strategies and situations. And once a useful number becomes a measure of success, it ceases to be a useful number, which is Goodhart's law. And it reminds us that the human world can move once you start to measure it. Once you start to try and put it in a box, it'll just go, I don't think so. Maybe move a little bit over there.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like, we tend to measure, we tend to get what we measure. So we should measure what we want. But how do you measure what you want if you don't know what it is that you want? So you get a lot of falling between the chairs when you're actually only dealing with data.
Yeah.
I think it was Brené Brown who said that data is just story without a soul.
And I'm when anyone kind of reminds me of data is life without a soul, my mind is taken back to Gene Roddenberry and Marjorie Roddenberry, who very much wanted to show that with the creation of the character data. That you can have a perfect replica, but until you give it life, until life is there, it will always be a facsimile.
It's one of those things too that this reliance on data, particularly on the internet, and people who are, and it may well be a generational thing at the moment because I'm not that keen on chatbots and things, because I really like to speak to a person in customer services. If someone is telling me that you can talk to us and it's a machine and I'm going round in circles and it can't actually understand, and it's only doing what the algorithm it has taught it to do, it's not the problem. The issue is the person who programmed it, because they haven't actually thought round the corners. They've thought, oh yeah, data. I'm going to put this data here, and this is going to be this question, because that's the only question that anybody's ever going to ask.
Yeah, and it's that, you know, development from conversation flows. Ask this question, you get an answer. You go here, you go here, you go here. Problem solved. And like you say, when life takes hold of that data stream, it kind of goes, nah, we're not having that. We're not going there. And that's a bit like networking as well. When we look at the world of networking within the therapeutic arena, we do tend to try and look for those professionals and connect to those professionals who are very much like ourselves and think like ourselves. We don't tend to come out of those silos and go and speak to people in different modalities or anything else, unless we are really comfortable and self-aware with what we're bringing to that table.
And if we want to actually build on the experiences and knowledge that we have.
Yeah. And this reminds me very much of Windy Dryden's conversation when he joined us at the end of the year, that this profession in the 21st century has got to learn to discipline and drift between modalities and learn different things from different silos, so we can meet somebody where they are by drifting into what it is that they need.
And I see it particularly in science, in the sciences. Physicists won't talk to biologists, biologists won't talk to geologists, and yet you have like physics biologists now, and astrobiologists, and so many different parameters of what it can be, but they're still staying in their little patches. They will not go out. And it's going to take, and it always takes, one person to stick their head above the parapet and risk being derided for their ideas.
Mm.
To say, look at Higgs boson.
Mm.
He was like, "You're kidding? God particle? What are you? Nah, not at all. You're never going to get that." And then suddenly one day, oh hello, and now
It
we
makes
have,
sense now.
yeah, but they still don't talk to each other, and they still have this idea of my discipline is better than yours
Mm.
because mine does this. I mean, I love watching The Big Bang Theory because the conversations between Sheldon and Amy and Howard, especially, Sheldon doesn't think that biology has anything to do with anything, and she's a neuroscientist.
Mm.
But he says, like, well, the brain's just squishy. But if he didn't have one, he wouldn't be
You
a
wouldn't be able to do
theoretical
anything.
physicist, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's this prejudice and this idea of, again, going back to what we started with, what's right and what's true. And it's how we're taught that. And this is the language that you use. And it did come up at one point that I sort of understood, I can't count. I have real difficulty with counting numbers. I'm dyscalculate.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't invented when I was at school, so I was just stupid. However, I managed to get myself into Glasgow University, into the psychology department. And of course in Glasgow University they're very heavy on statistics. And I'm looking at myself going, what is going on with you? You choose a place that's got statistics and you can't count? Excuse me? Are you totally, my little opponent was having a heyday. An absolute jumping for joy. This is my birthday and all my Christmases come at once. And so it ended up that I thought to myself, I'm going to have to do something about this. I'm going to have to get a tutor to try and figure out how to work this.
Mm.
And it was the case of, I actually hit the nail on the head for myself just through talking to this guy. And he said to me, what can I help you with? And I opened my little book up. And I said, this here, I don't know what this is. I can't do this. And he said, yes, you can. I said, no, I can't. He's a Chinese chap. So I'm sitting there going, are we having a communication problem here? Because I'm saying I can't do this and you're saying, yes, I can, but I can't. And then I said it, and of course, and this is the whole point about when we tell our stories, we're listening all the time. And I said to him, I don't speak this language. Hang on a minute, Leslie. You love languages. You love words. So he was breaking it down for me. What is this? What is this? What is this? And I could tell him what it was. I just didn't know how it fitted together at the time. But also, there was a belief there. That wolf had been fed. He was gorged.
Mm.
You can't do this.
Mm.
You're thick. You can't count.
Mm.
It was always fed to me every day at school. And yet, as soon as I said, I don't speak that language, it was a case of, it's a language.
Yep.
It's just something that they use to communicate with each other. And by the time 2 weeks had gone by, I was doing percentiles with that guy.
And sometimes it just takes that trigger moment to go, actually, I'm just repeating what I've been told without actually working out what that situation is for myself.
The biggest thing that we have to, and I know myself because it still traps me on occasions, particularly if I'm a little bit tired or whatever, is the emotional attachment to it. It's the embarrassment, the shame, the frustration. That wound just goes, hello.
Yeah. And I spend so much time when I'm working with clients who feel that that is going to happen, that shame is going to rear up. And when you actually point out and go, well, does anybody know that that was there in your past? Well, no. Okay, so are you walking around with a t-shirt that says my past is X, Y, or Z? Well, no. Are you going to present your past today or tomorrow? Well, no. Then how is anyone else going to see past what you present?
But
so if you're going to trip yourself up because of what is behind you.
It's that I'm just thick. I'm just this. It's the identity. We identify with that.
Yeah.
And it took other people telling me, excuse me, but you went to work in Monaco as a vet nurse. You got to be a vet nurse and you couldn't count.
Mm.
You were a surgical nurse, you couldn't count. You didn't kill
And
anything.
and it's that resetting, isn't it? The refocusing of those lenses. And when we can do that in a connective way with fellow professionals, the knowledge that is opened up, the the potential for those collaborations is immeasurable.
I think it's very important to understand that the client is the most important thing in the room. That's the most
The
important
client has
part.
the answers.
They have the answers inside them, but
Mm.
if we're not using the right tools to mine for those answers, we're not going to get them.
Yeah.
If we're not using the right keys, the right words, the right language, the right nuances, we're not going to get them, and they're not going to feel happy to open up to us.
Yeah. And for me, I think the key for the professional is to have as many layers in their toolbox, from
Yeah.
as many connections as possible, from as many different schools of thought as possible. So you can literally just go, okay, well, I've got this, but I know Leslie understands this. Right now, I need to tap into that so I can deliver that to the client and have that whole myriad of skill sets and create that layered safety net that means your client is always going to be able to get the answers that they need.
I mean, we did it. I'm shamanic practitioner, and basically that's how the story comes about. Because shamanism is all about the story, as is NLP. To be perfectly honest with you, it was during the times when I was doing storytelling, fairy tales, but doing them shamanically, so people were in a hypnotic state when they were being told. And we had people, because they were curious, we had people, they weren't just from the pagan community, they were nurses, doctors, lawyers, we had accountants, we had chemists, we had people from all different places, just curious because they'd seen it on Facebook. I thought, well, stories for adults, how does that work? Fairy tales for big people. Okay, you can only be over 16 if you want to go there. Well, I wonder what they do. But it's the actual seeing that you have to go around and pick their jaws up off the floor and put them back into place when they realise what they themselves are capable of doing and seeing. That their understanding of going and listening to a story, but not in an uptime trance, in a downtime. And being taken there, and as you get taken in, you're shedding off your adult clothes and becoming a child again. So you're open. And the magic is all there. And it's this understanding of using the terms, using the way of getting into someone's psyche and understanding that you're not playing with it, you're allowing them to play with it. You're just giving them the playroom and the toys.
Yeah. And it's that sense. Yeah, I always use the analogy of you can put a child in a playpen and leave them there, and all they will do is kick against the side of that playpen because they want that boundary to move. If you give a child a climbing frame, they will climb it and they will keep climbing and they will learn everything that they need to learn in order to climb. And when we look at storytelling as a tool, it's one of those things that allows a child and an inner child to actually harness that climbing frame in a way that doesn't happen when you've just got that playpen.
There are some people still in the playpen.
Oh yeah, of course there are.
Who actually use it to keep themselves in.
Mm.
Because they don't want to go out there because that's too much. I might find out that I'm more powerful than I actually do. I really want that? Do I want to go away from my bath of custard?
And
do I want to go out into the cold?
And do I want to question everything that those people that I've been there to sort of kind of nurture and everything else? I want to question whether or not they were right.
I think it's really an interesting thing to say that education is brilliant as long as we realise that it's a launching pad.
The
It's there
right
for,
education, the,
yeah.
the, the, the capacity of education is phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
But it's like anything, Einstein's theory of education. If you're going to judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will always be stupid. We've
Yes.
got to be able to adjust what individuals require and what is going to give them that launch pad.
But also,
And
again, when you try to measure that, and there's got to be a flow situation. There's got to be an alignment with the ideas. Basically, if you're going to pump ideology and dogma into children and turn them into little automatons, you're never really going to get any further than where you are. And when you have a child that questions that, you have to be able to have the courage and the ability, the integrity to say, I don't know. Let's find out.
yeah,
I
and
wonder
and
who.
allow that education to be a part of discovery.
Yes,
And
yes,
I can't remember the physicist's name. He is a frequent guest, or was a frequent guest of the Big Bang Theory. But he said the best way education can move forward is to make sure that we keep people curious.
yes.
When we stop curiosity because we've given people answers, we have lost their education. And that, I think, is the biggest mistake of our education in in the Western world, is that we go, here are the answers. This is what you need to know.
And this is true. It's a case of we need more people to be asking questions that they don't know the answer to, but that they don't take the first answer that comes.
Yeah,
That just is
explore,
it. They
discover.
need to explore
Yes.
and look underneath what that person's idea of that answer is, what they're subjectively looking at.
Yeah.
We have to
That,
go mining for our own nuggets of gold.
yeah, and that those nuggets of gold are invariably found in people that don't think like us, don't look like us, don't talk like us, don't have the experiences that we do. And the whole reason for being conversation with is to open up that curiosity so we can go and explore, we
Yeah, I
can
mean,
go and learn.
the whole thing about the interesting thing that I see from articles, particularly from America, on psychology and psychology based situations, sociology, have all got this one idea that the Western world is it.
Oh
If
yeah.
it didn't come from the Western world, it doesn't count. And there was at one point, and I think we discussed it in one of the conversations, that there were a couple of psychologists in America who had decided that mindfulness was just not good for you. There was no basis for, there was no research that had ever been done to say that it was. And I was like, excuse me, do you know there's a whole other part of the world that actually has lived this for centuries, and they're not all mad, and they're not all doolally, and they're not all frustrated and throwing things, and you know, and it actually has been done. They did research on how meditation and mindfulness could help people and bring down blood pressure and stop levels of frustration with thousands of people, thousands of a random sample. And yet these guys were insular in the idea. And for me, and I admit there is a prejudice there possibly, that I'm looking at this and I'm reading it and I'm going, you're just worried that you're not going to be in a job anymore. Because people are going to do it for themselves.
And the root of all of that comes down to, if they're going to be able to do it for themselves, they're not going to come in and ask for a pill, which means we're not going to get paid if they're doing it.
Yeah, but understanding that also we do have in the West this idea that, oh, that's a great idea. I'm gonna go and get a certificate off the internet and going to teach people that. And of course, that is just a big cauldron of hubble bubble toil and trouble coming up. And
Of course it
it's
is.
a case of, yeah, we have to look at it, and we have to understand that these people in the Asian areas of the world, in China, still sometimes, in all the Buddhist countries, they have this sense of being, this sense of calm, and it's ingrained in them. They also have dogma themselves as far as what they're traditionally allowed to do behaviourally in the families, etc. However, distilling down into the idea that they're not worried about whether or not they've got a pair of Jimmy Choos or Louboutins or whether their eyebrows could be seen from space. They're actually more worried about, they're not worried. They're in the moment, they're
Connected.
in the present, they're connected with life, they're stepping with life one footstep at a time,
Yeah.
one thought at a time, one way of being at a time. And I think we have to really stop this casting ourselves into the future and looking at something that hasn't even been set yet.
Yeah.
Because where we set it is right here. We
And
stand
it's
in a we stand in
and
a village of now,
yeah,
with one foot in the town of yesterday, looking at a metropolis of tomorrow and wanting to be there without actually making anything to make that work.
yeah. And that again to kind of highlight the need for the network and need for those connections, need for those collaborations. Because if we don't build those connected fibers, then we'll never be able to get the outcomes that we
No,
want.
and it's
We
the
need
thing is,
those.
it's not hard. It's not a difficult thing to do.
No.
All you have to do is go down your LinkedIn connections and look at their connections and say, oh, I wonder what they do. Go and have a look at their profile, which is usually, let's say, 90% of the time, not wonderful. But give it a chance and have a look. And then have a look and see, because look at some of mine. I have some interesting connections that you probably wouldn't think to look at. But they're from all over the world. And I've talked to most of them because I have this thing about having a chat with people and understanding who they are
And
before I will actually connect with them.
and that's the key to really good networking is actually making it's not just a digital connection on a screen, it's about that tangible conversation. And in the world of therapy, if we cannot have conversations with people, then there is something seriously wrong. If we are not brave enough to reach out to those people that think differently, that act differently, to learn about their experience and their understanding, then we lose ourselves as part of that failed.
I think there's a kind of prejudgment that goes on as well about how they're going to be judged, how we're going to be judged. Like, oh my goodness, what are they going to think of me? And yeah, interestingly, when I was going into psychology, I was interviewed by the teacher who should have done some NLP before she started this, but she said, you know, you're going to be going into a room with people who have already got degrees. Is that not going to be intimidating for you? And I was like, I've had consultant surgeons on their knees in front of me in tears. No, I'm not going to be intimidated by a degree.
I'm going to be intimidated by a piece of paper. Thank you very much. Leslie, um, you and I, as anyone who has watched a therapist in conversation episode, we could probably chat all day long. But I want to bring this to a close, and thank you so much for your time. Anyone, please connect with Leslie. Leslie is one of the most amazing connectors that I have ever come across, certainly in the therapeutic sector, if not as well. And the Leslie's approach is so open and so non-judgmental. You will get an amazing connection, amazing conversation. So please reach out, and I'll put a link to Leslie's LinkedIn on the description for the video.
And please do look at Therapists in Conversation on Facebook. But do answer the questions, because we don't book you in unless you've answered the questions.
Yes, and the words out of my mouth, folks. I mean, this is amazing. If anyone has gained from the conversation today, by all means, please fill out the CPD questionnaire that will be linked to the video, and you can get the CPD certificate for the administration cost. Nothing else. If you're an APA member, you get that CPD for free. And any of the in conversation with episodes, the hidden conversation episodes, or the featured member episodes, they are all CPD valued. So get those questionnaires in and get yourself those hours logged up as well. Leslie, thank you so much for your time. It's, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. And for everyone else, you again in another episode very, very soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.